And and hello, everyone. Welcome to What's Up in Archaeology for the 20th of July 2017. Today, I have a guest with me. I have Tim or Sage.
Hello,
Kronsell.
everyone, or hello, internet. Gotta keep to our, taglines.
Yes, and today we're going to do something a little bit different. I usually do a prehistory. Everyone knows that I'm a huge fan of Neanderthals and prehistory, but today I'm going to talk about what the Europeans call historical archaeology. In Australia, historical archaeology is post white settlement, and the same with America. But in Europe, historical archaeology is everything that has written records, basically.
Yeah, basically. That is history. As Europeans see it, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And we're going into Greece today. The Cylon Revolt in my title does not refer to Battlestar Galactica.
Damn it.
Sorry to disappoint you, Battlestar Galactica fans, but I'm one as well. I watched the original series and I watched the last series, which was, I liked them. Yeah, it was cool. So, what is the Cylon affair? Well, basically, I'm going to share the screen. We're going to start off a little bit of background, and then we're going to go on to the rest. I have two articles here, and I also have the Wikipedia article on Cylon of Athens because I didn't know who he was.
Don't tell Marty about it. That's all I have to say.
Oh no, I can tell anyone. I don't need to know. That's
I'm saying don't tell Marty you're opening Wikipedia.
Oh no, exactly. Oh yes. I used Wikipedia to get just a little bit of background because there are links, and I usually do the links.
This is where Marty and I have our fights. I usually use Wikipedia to find other sources.
Yeah, exactly. Wikipedia is good to find the sources, people. It's shit that the article itself, they're very, very basic. Like, I know enough of a lot of subjects which are Wikipedia level, but what I know is a hell of a lot of subjects at that level. I might not know specifics, and many people have that, but it's a starting point. Don't diss it because it's a starting point. Never stop there. Use that as your starting blocks for the marathon to find the information you want.
Exactly.
But anyway, let's share the screen because sharing screens and sharing is always good. I like sharing.
Hooray!
For friendships, beers, dinner, no sex though. that I'll reserve to my wife. So sorry. Anyway, 2016 in April, this story from Psy.org. Ancient mass graves were discovered in Greece, and we can see here some people. And you can, if you guys notice, I'll try and just augment the magnification a little bit. These skeletons are shackled. They are tied up. Their hands are tied up. Some facing up. Some were thrown into the ground with their faces down. This is significant. I'll come to that a little bit later. We'll just read. They discovered 80 bodies in an ancient. For now, this is speculation. It says archaeologists have discovered two mass graves near the Greek capital containing a skeleton of 80 men who may have been followers of the ancient would-be tyrant Cylon of Athens.
May I break in as a quick note here?
Absolutely, go on. Yes.
The only thing I want to say, because we'll get to actual Cylon and the other guys later, is that you might have gone over it before, but a Greek tyrant wasn't a tyrant as we understand it. I don't know exactly how this article refers to it, but you need to be aware that when we are referring to a tyrant in this thing, we're referring to the Greek version of it, which was simply a ruler who had taken power outside the sort of established legal tradition. It didn't necessarily have to be a bad ruler. A lot of tyrants were very popular and established new, very popular sort of dynasties, while everyone had hated the old one. But a tyrant was basically just anyone who had taken power sort of from the outside of the city.
Yes, this article does refer to torrent in the traditional Greek way, so we can clarify that. They know this is quite a good scientific publication, so they can distinguish between what our torrent, modern torrent, means and what the ancient Greek torrent was. Yeah, just basically a ruler, yeah. So, yeah, but this is not the article I want to. This was just a preamble. They found mass graves. Actually, the graves were found 100 years ago, but only in about last year did they start doing the excavation. It's in a cemetery just outside Greece. It has a total of 1,500 people, not body, god damn it, skeletons in it. So we will go to the real one here. Oops, that's not what I wanted. Here we go. Just lower the magnification because it's a bit too high. That's about it. Here we go. So it goes here, basically more than 2,500 years ago, an Athenian nobleman named Cylon, the first recorded Olympic champion. That is a little bit significant because we know that the Olympic Games were basically a Tim, weren't they? The Olympic Games basically sort of they were a contest, an athletic contest for over four yearly. That's every 4 years.
No, every 4 years. That's the whole point.
Yeah, that's
Olympiad, every 4 years.
Every 4 years. Every 4 years. That's what I wanted to say. To pit the
it was
athletes.
In many ways, the Olympic Games was sort of cultural. How to put it? The cultural mainstay that bound all the Greek states together. There were various political alliances, or military alliances. There were the cultural sort of bonds that held them together. But the Olympic Games were where everyone, basically, not everyone came together because there wasn't actually that many who came to the Olympic Games. But the Olympic Games was when all the cities sent their either athletes or elites, priests or whatever to go have a little, sporting competition.
Yeah, they sent basically their elite peoples.
Yeah,
because
originally it was only one run. People were running, but other stuff came along, of course, as the years progressed.
And it was a celebration to Zeus, because it was held in Mount Olympia, and they even stopped any wars that were happening between the Greek states for that period. That I know from primary school, in fact. Basics, because I remember this is a bit of anecdotal stuff. I was in 1970. Let's see, it was one of the 70s Olympiads. Could have been Montreal. Could have been. I know it was before LA and Moscow, so it was those ones before those. Rome, maybe it had been Rome even. No, Rome was earlier. Anyway, I had to write an essay on the Olympic Games, and that's how we found out the stuff. So yes. Anyway, so this guy was one of the first Olympic recorded champions, and he tried to take over the city of Athens and install himself as a sole ruler, not a tyrant. That would be another type of title he would have, wouldn't it be, Tim?
Yeah, whatever title he would have had is a very difficult thing to say, because at the time he would have been considered a tyrant, but it's really hard to say because we don't really know how Athens was governed at the time. We have sort of an idea about it, but this is actually what's even more interesting, the fact that he's the first mentioned Olympic champion. This is actually either the second or the absolutely earliest historical record we have of anything happening in Athens. Everything before that is, of course, there are legends and all the usual stories. This is the first time we actually have sort of definitive historical and archaeological proof of what might have happened or what had happened.
Exactly. Yes, that it was the real beginning of the Golden
So,
Age,
so,
the
so it's
second,
really
yeah.
difficult. So it's really difficult to know if he would have been considered a tyrant as such. Because we'll get back to that. There were some
Yeah, we
issues
will, yeah.
in Athens at the time. But let's
So,
let's go on with the archaeology
yeah,
to start.
and so Thucydides and Herodotus, of Athenian and Greek historians who wrote about the coup, Cylon enticed an army of followers to enter the city, lay siege to the Acropolis. They were defeated, but Cylon managed to escape. Of course, the leader always manages to escape. That's
It's one way of putting it.
Most of the time, yeah.
Yeah.
Now, archaeologists in Athens believe that they may have found the remains of the Cylon's army in a mass grave in Phaleron, about 4 miles from the 6 kilometers south of downtown Athens. That's quite close. I don't know. Well, I don't know how close that is. I don't know Athens that well. I know London very well, Paris well, New York very well. Melbourne, Jesus, I can go around blindfolded in Lisbon and that, but I don't know Athens, which is a failing of mine. I should know it.
At the time, Athens wasn't that big.
Yeah, no, it was. Yeah, it was around the Acropolis. I don't know.
This was outside the city, but not that much outside.
Much, yeah. So they discovered 8 skeletons of men the discovery of 80 skeletons of men is unequaled in Greece, said the project director Stella Chrysoulaki. I love pronouncing Greek names. That's
I'm not even going to try.
It's because I was raised with Greeks. My schools, all the schools I attended was 60% Greek, so they were good. I love them. Yeah, I hated them. So yeah, it was a love-hate relation. I love them now, though. They're awesome people. The men were young and well fed. They were found lying in unmarked graves in 3 rows, some with their backs, while others they're tossed face down in their stomachs. I showed you guys earlier that picture. They won't be seen in this article, but the first article I showed you guys, so I won't go there because I closed the link. So anyway, it's in the description. If you guys want to read it, it's there. I always put my sources there. So. Now, they died from blows to the head, victims of political, quote-unquote, executions. Could be. And they dated to 675 to 650 BC. So they are within the period of the legend, quote-unquote, of the Cylon affair. Yeah. Chrysoulaki said. Now, that's her. You can see the graves here. As she said, at the time Athens was being formed, it was a city in transitions toward democracy. Eliana Preveduru, a bioarchaeologist researcher of the project, said, "Yes, we know that it was the beginnings of because Greece itself of course, has a long history into the Bronze Age. We know even earlier from the Mycenaeans. Well, they were the Bronze Age peoples. And then after the Bronze Age collapse, the Dorians came from the north, if I can remember my archaeology. Yes, they came from the north, the Dorians. And they brought, according to researchers that were studying in high school, not in high school, this is in archaeology itself, the Dorians brought in the actual Greek language. Well, they didn't really bring in the actual Greek language. They just probably spoke it because the Greek language was already there. They just brought in a slightly different alphabet, because the alphabet that was used by the Mycenaeans, who were Greek, was Linear B, which derives from the what's that island? Crete, Cretans.
Yeah, Crete. Yeah.
Which was Linear A, which we still haven't deciphered. Linear A, we've deciphered Linear B, but not A. So yes, a bit of background information, guys. This is just so you guys can see. So this period, the beginning of this period, around 600 and early 700 BC, was the formation of the new Greek. What's a word that would describe that? The Golden Age, the beginning of their Golden Age, the beginning of their modern. You can say their modern history.
the thing we know as Athens were basically founded in these years.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. The beginning formation of their political systems, as was mentioned here, was becoming transitioning towards a democracy. But it's not the democracy we have, people. That's where everyone, even with this democracy lasted in every country, that Western countries, etc., up about till the 1850s.
Yeah, give or take.
Yeah, give or take.
Give or take.
And what is this? Yeah, that only the rich landowners could vote.
Well, at least the landowners.
Yeah, at least the landowners. And it didn't matter if in many countries that even in the UK and France, I don't know about France, but I know the UK, even Portugal, if you were a female landowner, you could vote.
Yes. Everything basically depended on, not
your
money,
wealth.
actually, but landholding.
Landholding, yeah, exactly. And so this democracy were the city elders, the free people, rich people, possibly the soldiers, maybe. I don't really know too much about the Greek society at this period. I know the very, very basics. So I think that, yeah, that's how that democracy that they speak of here is. And it's not like ours. So that's where people get, especially some sectors get confused. Oh, the women only got the votes in the 1920s. No, if they were landowners, they would vote earlier.
Also, the concept of getting the vote is always a bit interesting, because that really only came around with the concept of universal suffrage.
Yeah, exactly. Mostly because of World War One, that the men that didn't vote, the peasants and the factory workers and that, they didn't vote, but because they went to war, they were given the whole society was given universal suffrage because they died and they had no compensation. They were fighting with the war that they didn't vote for. Basically,
I don't want to quote Blackadder of all things as a historical source. But there's a wonderful scene in Blackadder the Third where Blackadder is talking about the British electoral system as it was before 1832, and basically describes Manchester, population 60,000, electoral roll 3. It wasn't quite as bad, but it wasn't that far off either, to be perfectly honest.
Ben Elton is a historian, one of the comedic writers. He loves that medieval history, that part of history. So yes, he quoted. He was knowledgeable on what he wrote. They presented it in the most beautiful, classical, greatest comedy. Yes.
In this particular time, though, the democracy in Athens hadn't really developed yet. It seemed to have been ruled by a collection of clan alliances, and the various archons that ruled. They were Athens and a lot of other towns at the time, but particularly Athens was ruled by a sort of civil servants, noblemen called archons, and they seem to have been appointed by the one probably from each clan that was dominant in the city at any given time.
Mm-hmm.
Just to make sure we know where we are, because it's true with the democracy and thing. It's just not super relevant at the time of the Cylonian affair. Because at that time they were archon ruled and probably under a sort of clan alliance thing.
Exactly.
Hard to say, because as we said, this is the first sort of real historical evidence we have. So everything before that, even just to the day before this, is kind of hazy.
Yeah, or that we might find as archaeology is discovering, they may find other records, because they kept the records not just they kept records in clay and in metallic. So yes. What happened here was the article says is basically a type of a crime scene investigation. They're going to mention a few series, CSI crime scene investigation and that, but well, that's basically what it does. But instead of in one episode that it looks like hours, the real crime scene investigation takes a hell of a long time. So they were going to use, roughly speaking, the methods made famous. They used the methods made famous in the forensic crime scenes. Joked Panagiotis, Karkanos, the laboratory director and the geoarchaeologist at the Malcolm H. Wiener, not to be confused with the other Wiener that's going to jail, American Wiener, the laboratory of the American School of Classical Studies in Athens. They mentioned probably the most famous TV series, CSI Crimes Investigation, etc., etc. But that's just filling up space. Ignore that shit. What they did, they performed a battery of tests, particularly they extracted genetic material. They did radiography, isotope analysis from the teeth, because that's where most of the isotopic analysis ends up, unless you can find hair. That are the two best sources in archaeology or anthropology, etc. And forensic archaeology. You have to find the place where it's alive. Well, bone is alive, but teeth have some form of absorbing most of isotopes that people eat, that you eat, because everything you eat has radioactive isotopes in it, whether you like it or not. We are breathing in carbon 14, which decays into carbon 12, which will then be, and the difference between carbon 14 and carbon 12 is the way we radiometrically carbon date stuff.
Yep.
So, and that's where they basically get the best samples from the teeth of the isotopes, of even other isotopes like nitrogen and a whole plethora of other stuff. And to uncover the mystery hidden inside each skull and skeletal fragment. Here we have one of them. This one here, if you guys can see, his hands are tied behind his back. That's significant. He was a prisoner. How are you, Wikipedia, mate? Just giving a shout out to everyone and Vince, Jinsitarix, Warped, Carlos, all my dear people, which I love always having you. You are my family. It's like having a reunion with very close friends. So this one is, you can see this one was a prisoner of some sort. He was something significant because free people they are not buried with their hands tied. And most likely, the scenario is like the one that I said. Why was there some thrown into common graves? People are normally buried, even in this far time. Even Neanderthals. I've talked about even Neanderthals buried their dead in a dignified manner. But this type is not a dignified burial.
There are some. Well, we talked about that before. The concept of burying our dead is basically what transformed us into real humans, because it basically proves that we suddenly received the mental capacity to do abstract thinking, rather than just consider someone who died as as herd animals or anyone else would do in nature.
And with Homo naledi, that sort of threw a spanner in their work, because you don't need a big brain to actually conceptualize the afterlife. But that's for another stream.
Yeah.
So the clues that they gathered gave them an idea of how old these men were and where they related and where they came from, because you can get isotope analysis of bones and teeth, the specific isotopes present in areas while not having them in another area. You can locate people by even drinking water. If you drink water all your life from one area, you'll have the isotopes of that water in your majorly big, and a big percentage in your body, which compares to someone else from a distance away drinking or eating food from that area. So that's how that can locate them, and how healthy they were, and how they and where they stood in the socio-economic ladder of the time. So, but unlike crime dramas, these revealed exactly how and why the crime took place. The cold case, it's a bit of. It took them 5 to 7 years, actually.
They expected to take it 5 to 7 years.
5 to 7 years, exactly. Yeah. So in the whole area, they found 1,500 skeletons. It was a grave, but not all graves are the same. Just the area where they excavated had 1,500 graves. And the site was found 100 years ago in the large-scale excavations of a complex which only began in 2012. So they knew about this site 100 years ago, because shit, every corner of Greece has been excavated, starting from Arthur Evans to Heinrich Schliemann to a plethora of other archaeologists, which I can't remember now because I'm crap at names. But
at least you remembered Schliemann.
Yes, Schliemann and Evans were two of the greats that excavated Mycenae and Hisarlik or Troy, and also the Cretan Minoan civilization. Let's not forget that. Those three pyramids. It's basically the triumphant area of awesomeness in the Bronze Age of the Aegean.
Yes, the Egyptians were in terminal decline at the time. The Persians hadn't really risen yet.
Exactly.
It was time for the Greeks.
Yes, the Greeks, and but the Egyptians knew about them.
Yeah, of course they did. I'm just saying after the fall of the what's it called,
the Bronze Age,
the New Kingdom.
Yeah.
After the fall of the New Kingdom, Egypt was basically in terminal decline, and their power and reach was so diminished that kingdoms such as Greece could spread out across the Aegean and the Mediterranean without having any sort of real fear of running into a major superpower that would kick them back where they came from.
I got to answer this. I just saw a quote from Vercingetorix, but Tariq, the Spartans were white supremacists because Persians and other Greeks were black. Of course, he would say that Tariq is an embarrassment to Homo sapiens sapiens.
Tariq is embarrassment to multicellular life. You don't necessarily have to qualify it more than that.
Yep, that's perfect. We shall use that. So, getting back, the mass grave was uncovered last spring. Like I said, the article before in 2016, the largest excavation site Greeks has ever unearthed. The site was, they found, the archaeologists discovered a large cemetery containing over 1,500 skeletons dating back between the 8th and the 5th century BC. More than 100 of them bore marks of, but the violent death in that time was not out of the ordinary. But the 80 that were found, so they were violent death, but they also had their hands tied, and they were clearly not the same violent death as many of them would have.
Were in the same grave, not just in the same area. They were basically in the same mass grave.
3 layers, 3 rows, exactly. So the small-scale excavations that then unearthed other treasures, including a group of men believed to be Cylon's army. That's the special thing about this cemetery. It's not the 1,200, the 1,500, or the one more than 100 that bore. It's this one because it sort of ties up. Well, I won't go ahead of myself. Many of the skeletons found were bound and shackled and face down in unmarked graves, sometimes in sandy holes barely big enough to hold the body. This is a mark of not respecting the dead. So you don't do that to people who are just, even if they die of a violent death, like a duel or defending the city or something. This was bodies that they felt loathing to or disrespect to. Other skeletons were buried in open pits, placed in funeral pyres or in jars, and preferred coffins at the time of infants and small children. See, they were buried open pits, placed in funeral pyres and in jars, or preferred coffins. This is a mark of respect, in contrast to the other ones that weren't respected.
Yep. All true.
The cemetery measured 4,000 square meters. That's big.
It is
large. Yeah. And had 1,500 skeletons, and so they were all taken to this laboratory's facilities for proper study. Now, at least 10 of the 80 men found are headed for the lab later this year. That's what they're going to do. They're going to really analyze them much more in depth. One of the skeletons already in the lab, with his arms twisted behind his back, is a reflection of a past Athens violence, which is this one here at the start. This one, the first one. If you guys can see it, it'll come up in a bit because of the lag.
Yep.
But you will see it. Well, getting back to where was I?
You were there. Something about.
Yeah. He could have been a prisoner of war, a criminal, or a runaway slave. Preveduru said. True. He could have been all of those three, or none of those three. Like if they are trying to link with the Cylon, it could have been that soldier.
Yep. In which case, they probably, by the way, would have been prisoners of a certain degree. But again, we'll tell the whole story in a second.
Oh yeah, basically because they're still studying. They still have up to 10 years of studying on each or more. Depends on how they go of what they are talking or what they have there. They have to, and every minute detail, even the size. If they like, for example, the skull could be complete, just a hole, the type of hole in the back of the skull or the front of the skull or the actual skull itself. Like you guys are seeing this one here, the whole skull is fractured. That could have been by a lot of factors, or could have been done in situ. When they analyze it specifically with the forensic archaeologists, etc., they will know if that was made in life, just prior to life, or later after his death.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, prior to death, at death's time, or sometimes after his death. That's what I was meant to say. So even the non-violent deaths or deaths without historical references, notably the hundreds of children's remains found in jars, have a story to tell, Karkana said. Yes, absolutely. The bones could reveal the children's lifestyles, the diseases, shedding more light on ancient Athenian culture and history. Well, one of the culture is burying children in jars, for example.
Yeah, I was about to say right there.
That's just the most obvious thing you can have there. How they treated the children. It's not a sign of disrespect. These are funeral jars. They're not all things. They're not just ordinary household shit that they are. Look, our kids died. Let's put him in the jar and bury him. No, these are specific burial vessels. Would be a better name than just calling them jars. They are shaped more or less like amphorae jars or so on, but they are not jars in the same order of magnitude. So yeah.
Come on, Scotch. Everyone is blocked by Steve Shives.
Yeah, exactly.
Steve Shives' wife is blocked by Steve Shives, for fuck's sake.
Probably. So most of recorded ancient history in Athens and Greeks life described that the elite and the victors truncated. Yes, that's always been like that. There are a few societies post 1800s, would you say?
Yeah,
that actually start recording the peasants and them having any form of importance.
Yeah, to a certain degree. It's difficult because there are also some cultures, like again the early Roman, where actually freeholding farmers, for instance, were some of the more prominent members of the society. Let's rather say that it had to get up to at least the last few centuries BC before we started to have anything regarding the lower classes, whatever the lower classes then was.
Yeah, exactly. The non-freeholding, the workers, the slaves, the helpers of the merchants, for example, the cart loaders, the night pan emptiers, the water carriers. I could name 1,000 of the professions that I know Rome had.
Mm-hmm.
because they had them here, and I've in Braga, Portugal. It's a northern Portuguese city, not far from where I live. It has it's basically, you dig anywhere, you hit Roman artifacts in that city.
Yeah, basically.
And so it has one of the most prominent Roman history museums in Portugal, and in Portugal at least.
I will now dox my mother and say she's actually in Braga right now. So if anyone's down there, go say hi.
Oh, she should come up. She comes up to. She's only 93 kilometers away from me.
Tell her son doxed her.
You're not doxing. No one find her. There are hundreds of Danish, Dutch, Belgium tourists. No doxing here. You won't find it. Yeah. So, to rely solely on testimonies to understand the past, we'll be reading newspapers today to find out what's going on right there. The link below is the one I showed you guys before. So, we've been gone, almost an hour. We can still continue about the ancient history in this. What will they... This is...
skeletons are infinitely fascinating.
Oh, yes, they are. They
regarding historical and archaeological records. Like, never get tired of it.
No. I've held so many skeletons while studying, and skulls, and that they don't really scare me or anything. Even modern ones, they don't really give it. They don't do anything to me.
Scotch, probably not plague, by the way.
No.
There was, to the best of my knowledge, no actual plague breakouts, at least none of significance in Greece in these years.
Plague would have been much later, though.
Plague has been around since like forever, but there was none in Greece that we know of at any rate.
They would have had malaria.
Yeah, of course, but
malaria, typhus, typhoid. A lot of diseases that have been eradicated now, but plague not to the proportions of the Middle Ages. No, that was an exceptional case of.
I think the first sort of plague we really know about is in the Han Dynasty in China, maybe, but even that was 500-600 years after this.
Yes. It's supposed to have come from there anyway. That virulent strain of the pest, pest.
Yeah, exactly, the pestilence, the plague.
Yeah, because was basically was the Turks bombarding Austria, Vienna, if I'm not mistaken.
I am gonna make a video about them. As soon as I get some decent equipment, I'm so gonna make that Battle of Vienna video.
Oh, that's gonna be.
I've had it lying around since I started my channel. I just want to actually get some decent equipment before I do it, because I feel like it ought to be, done justice.
Done justice, exactly. I would feel the same. Yeah, I'm a crap script writer. That's why I prefer to do these type of things.
Yeah, the same thing with me. If you watch my videos, you'll realize I just ramble.
No, but you don't.
Also, Scotch. Let me just answer Scotch. That skull is pre-Roman times. Theoretically, no. Theoretically, Rome had been founded at this time.
Scotch?
Vercingetorix. I know I'm a Scotch from the old days. Theoretically, Rome is about 100 years earlier. Theoretically. We don't know. But, officially.
Well, the beginnings, the little village, the few villages of Rome, they were earlier, yeah.
So I'm saying, it's true that this skull is pre-Roman in the sort of Roman glory days, but...
Vince, I'm going to call you Scotch as well, man. It's easier for me because even though I'm a Celt descendant, the French Celts have crappy pronunciable names.
Yeah, I know. It's terrible.
I am joking. I am absolutely joking, and please forgive me. This is a joke. This is absolutely a joke. But this is a recorded event. But this society was back. It could be it absolutely would have been almost continuously since Athens was founded as a minuscule village in a prominent place.
Yeah,
That's how all cities was. No, warped. I don't hate the frogs. No,
I do.
I only hate.
I mean, I
only.
don't, of course
I
not.
only hate the. I only hate the frog politicians and shit. But yeah.
Should I, while I always love interacting with chat, should I just go quickly over what the Cylonian affair actually was? Since we
Please
now
do, please. Yes.
talked about it for about an hour without
Yes.
actually explaining anything about it.
Yes, please do.
All right.
Now we've covered the archaeology. Now we're going to go into the actual what happened.
Yeah.
You have the floor.
The Cylonian affair was, as Carlos mentioned earlier, an attempt by this guy Cylon, an incredibly honored and influential gentleman within Athens as a former Olympic champion, to take control of the town. In fact, to become, as we said, a tyrant, to overthrow the current state of affairs and become sole ruler. Probably a dictatorial version of it, but to become a tyrant. So how do we do that? Well, easily enough, we establish ourselves an army, and then we ask the Oracle of Delphi how to do it. And the Oracle of Delphi basically told him that the government of Athens shall fall if attacked during the festival of Zeus. And Cylon, being an Olympic champion, of course, realized that would mean the Olympic Games. Except it really didn't. But the point is, because when he gathered his army and marched into Rome, there were only so and so many people who actually supported him. And the 9 archons gathered their forces and, basically crushed most of the rebellion. I'll get back to what I want to say later. Cylon and his brother escaped the town, and we don't really know that much about him after the Cylonian affair. However, his followers, or at least some of his followers, took refuge in the temple of Athena, who was, of course, the Athens, patron deity, and in there they were untouchable because the temple was a sanctum, an inviolable asylum, whatever could be basically said. So, there was, as long as they were in there, they couldn't be brought out because violence and weapons were like, no.
Yeah.
If you ever seen that, consider this basically like Highlander.
That's what I was thinking about. Yeah, the holy ground.
It's not quite to that. It's even more than that. But yeah. Anyway, the chief archon at the time, a fellow by the name of Megacles or Megacles.
You better tell them what that title was, because they won't know.
Sorry.
The chief.
The chief magistrate. It was basically just the sort of highest of the archons.
Archon,
as I said, Archon was, I can't even remember what Archon means in Greek. This is really embarrassing at the moment, but the Archons were sort of the ruling elected magistrates of the town. Now, as I mentioned before, theoretically, they were elected by the entire town. In practice, they were probably each elected by whatever clan they belonged to. Athens at the time were probably a clan-ruled town with various clans forming political alliances in order to maintain a structural government. Anyway, this lord
says it's a ruler, basically.
Yeah, basically. This Lord Megacles that I'm going to call him because it sounds funny, was of one of the more powerful clans, the Maonite clans, and he decided that we needed these rebels out of the temple. So he told them that he would let them go under a truce. Basically, you can get out of town. We're not going to hurt you. Don't worry about it. Now, there are 2 stories now, and I'm going to start with the amusing one, because the guys inside the temple was well aware that Megacles was not about to just let them go. But on the other hand, they couldn't just stay in because they've already, eventually they would starve, and they gotten, free pass out of town. So they tied a rope around all of them and tied the rope back to the main statue of Athena, meaning that if anything were happening to them, it would also sort of symbolically be happening to the statue and thus to the goddess that protected, guarded, and had in fact been instrumental in founding Athens. Now, the story goes that on their way out, the rope suddenly burst as if by magic, and Megacles then declared that as a sign of divine favor for his cause, and that the vow of protection no longer applied to the rebels, and had his men murder them all.
Yeah, Athena didn't approve.
Exactly. Another explanation has that Megacles cut the rope himself and then said, well, now you're no longer connected to the goddess, and murdered them all. Our third possibility, this is all, by the way, from Plutarch, and Plutarch was so late that it's and very good at inventing stuff. More likely, the guys came out, and Megacles basically just decided to say, screw this, we're not gonna, keep our agreement, and murdered all of them. Anyway, they were all murdered. Let's just put it like that. And the point is, of course, to finish the story, Megacles and his clan was actually thrown out of town and put under a sort of social cultural stigma because they had basically broken the vows and killed surrendering supplicants, which was, a sort of, it was not a nice thing to do at the time.
To access a bit more of Blackadder reference, he didn't think his cunning plan through.
No, it was not as cunning as a Fox professor in cunning from Oxford. No, it really wasn't. Anyway, Megacles and his clan was then thrown out of the town. It took them about 100 years, I think, maybe 150, to get back into town and reestablish themselves. But anyway, the point is that it is believed that these skeletons here are the remainders of those Cylonian rebels that was lured out of the temple of Athena and then murdered. However, the murder then might have happened or not.
People don't really realize that nothing that we are doing today is new. We are just basically repeating or basically the same patterns that have occurred before.
Also, by the way, Archaeonomy, Megacles in a Darth Vader costume would make this story so much cooler.
Oh, wait, whoa. Yes, I think he would. Because Megacles was a cunt. Well, from what I've read.
Oh yeah, he wasn't a nice guy.
He wasn't a nice guy. God damn it!
I find your lack of ropes. I find your lack of ropes disturbing. Murder them all.
And oh man, this you can see the modern thinking, modern power grabs, modern, but even by our standards, absolute modern, contemporary to us now, thinking and stuff, political machinations that occurred there. Just going a little bit back to the Bronze Age about let's call it the triangle of Mycenae, Historic, and the Hittites. The Minoans not as much. They would have been, by this time that I'm thinking about, they would have been more weakened. They were weakened by the Santorini earthquake, the volcano eruption. So yeah, but that's another story that we can cover some other time, because these things are quite interesting. But anyway, getting back to that, I studied I memorized the Trojan War that Michael Wood made, and his book. I have his book. I memorized it. Basically, I love that story and the archaeology, but I had to read the book of his book and so on. And some of the tablets that were discovered between the communications between the kings of the Hittites and the kings of the Mycenaeans. Mycenaeans were everyone knows Mycenaeans. The Mycenaeans from the film Troy.
Of course.
They were the ones that attacked Troy itself. The ones that launched 1,000 ships. The king of Mycenae, his wife or something ran off with King God, what's his name?
Paris.
Paris, exactly him. He was a Trojan. So that's where Mycenae is. But these were sort of real people. I mean, the actual people, the Mycenaeans and the Trojans and the Hittites. Troy was a little bit of background, just a little bit of trivia. Troy was a Greek city-state located in Anatolia, what is now Turkey. And they were sort of semi-independent. They were sort of pledging allegiance to the Hittites, and that's why the Greeks later attacked them. The Assyrians, but that's not what I'm trying to get at. The clay tablets of the communications that the kings of the Hittites were communicating with the kings of the Mycenaeans. I've read some of them, they sound like the Cold War treaties between, say, Reagan and Gorbachev, or even Nixon and what's his name?
The
Soviets, the two superpowers.
Yeah,
they were at war
at the time, with Nixon.
Yeah, they were sort of rivals, but they treated each other as, when they talked, they said, "My brother, I present you this problem." And my brother, yes, I understand your problem, but I have this problem. That was bloody modern as you can get diplomacy. And this is 2,000 years ago.
Yes.
That's why I love archaeology and I love history. I love archaeology more, but history can be so fascinating.
It can. That's basically why I do it.
Yes, and I don't have. It is a personal choice. I would have loved to be a historian, but I found archaeology more interesting to me. Only it is not worse or better or anything.
Of course not.
No.
History and archaeology cannot live without each other. We've discussed this before.
Exactly. Yes.
We're basically. I mean, we're brothers, dude.
Yes, absolutely. More. Yes, true. And people. Well, I'm not going to beat myself off about many of this, but you guys see what I mean. It is a really fascinating thing, and we've gone for an hour. What do you say? We round that up?
Yeah, give or take.
Yeah, we've done it for an hour. I think it's a good chat. I hope people liked it.
I did. Anyway, that's the important bit.
Yeah, so did I. I loved it. We learned something. I learned something. I learned about learned about a lot about Cylon. I absolutely did not have a clue who he was until I started. When I read this article, when I first was sent to me, basically by the archaeology people that I follow, and so, oh shit, I can do this with someone who. Man, I thought of you. I think of someone. That's who I do. The first person that comes to my mind. It is not discrimination, just randomness. That's how I'll excuse myself.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine.
Because I love you. Because I love you all equally. I can't. God damn it! I can't. It's hard to say no. Can you come on and not say to another one? Can you come on? It's hard. You don't know how hard it is. So I've said it. No, it's first person. That's it.
I like that. It's a fairly good way of going about it.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for coming on. Please watch Sage's YouTube. It is marvelous. It is superb. By the
way, may I make one suggestion to everyone in the stream? If you have any interest in ancient Greek history and you can find it, there's a lot published later, but if you can find it, just again for the for a sort of an idea of how history can be when it's best, go find someone called John Bury, or John Bagnall Bury. He published a history book in the year 1900 called The History of Ancient Greeks Until the Death of Alexander the Great. Go find that. It is so good.
Bury?
John Bagnall, Bagnell, Bury. Bagnall Bury. I very much doubt the book is in public sales right now, but if you can find it at an antiquary or something, go find it.
What's the chat? Did I spell it right?
Did I spell it right? Hang on. Did you put it in
the chat? In the normal chat.
Skip the E. Make the last E in his middle name and another L, and you got him.
Okay. So Bagnall. Bagnall. Oh, Bagnall.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. And again, he's very... I don't think you can get his book outside an antiquary area right now. Maybe you can find it at the library. Go read it. It's really, really good.
The EU might have published those old books.
Thank you, Carlos.
Try those as well. I sometimes go to look for the old out of copyright books, and it's a treasure, guys. It's a treasure. I have Dracula, the actual Bram Stoker's original Dracula, Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. I have the Book of the Farm by, what's his name? God. It is current. Yeah, so yes. There you go. Awesome. Yep, cool. Okay, people. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
No, you are. It's my honor, man. It's always my honor to have you on.
I'm always willing, if at all possible, for work and all sorts of shit.
We shall do more.
We shall.
Yes, we shall. So, people, thank you, and see you now on Monday for my normal What's Up in Archaeology. Brought something. I'll think of something. I have a few ideas. So until then, good night. Good night.